So we're continuing where we left off before the tea break on the session 3 on the topic of robotics, open science and artificial intelligence, all new technologies and data trends in libraries and general industry as we experience it these days. And we have 2 presentations going forward, one on future ethics from Professor Anton van Niekerk, and a second on trends in artificial intelligence research, specifically from Professor Brito Cruz. Professor van Niekerk his presentation will deal on what the future of ethics is, given the demands of the 4th Industrial Revolution, and with particular attention given to the effects algorithms in robotic operations have on moral evaluation. Professor Cruz will follow him shortly thereafter virtually, and he will show an analysis of the extraordinary development of the research landscape in artificial intelligence and discuss interesting opportunities for science-based applications to be developed in smaller nations, and specifically addressing the challenges in doing so, and smaller nations such as South Africa and, well, Brazil in this context. So I would like to introduce Professor van Niekerk. Professor van Niekerk is a professor of philosophy and the director of the Center for Applied Ethics at Stellenbosch University. He is also a member of the Data and Computational Ethics Research Group. And in 2018, and Professor van Niekerk was one of the first distinguished professors appointed at Stellenbosch University in 2014. In 2018, he was the recipient of the Chancellor's Medal Award for his overall lifetime achievement as an academic, and consequently also at that time in 2018, his tenure was prolonged for another 5 years at Stellenbosch University, for which we are very grateful because we have him now to share his thoughts with us. Professor van Niekerk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind invitation. Let me make it clear right from the outside, from the outset. I am neither a librarian nor a data specialist. I'm nothing more than a humble philosopher who from time to time likes to ask ethical questions. And I hope there are no serious expectations for anything more from me. The question to be addressed in my paper is the following. Do the technological developments of the 4th Industrial Revolution justify, let alone compel us to acknowledge new forms of ethics or a radically rethinking of the nature of what we currently call ethics? It is probably still to preempt the answer. It is probably still too early to answer this question adequately or comprehensively. The 4th Industrial Revolution, particularly as far as the development of the artificial intelligence is concerned, challenges us in unprecedented ways to account for the range and identity of moral actors and the nature and impacts that might have moral relevance. It also challenges us to rethink not only the claim that ethics essentially pertains to that which is human, but it also challenges us in a way, in ways that are more particular than we ever would have thought, to rethink the very nature of the human or of humanity itself. If we can just move on with these slides. What do we mean by the 4th Industrial Revolution? Schwab and Pluchinski are among many authors who succinctly circumscribed what the concept actually refers to. And I quote, "The first industrial revolution used water and steam to mechanize production. The second used electric power to create mass production. The third used electronics and information technology to automate man's production." And to this, Pleshinski adds, and I quote, "Now, based on a completely digitalized world, the fourth industrial revolution is characterized by a fusion of technologies that is blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. The possibilities will be multiplied by emerging technology breakthroughs in fields such as artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, material science, energy storage, and quantum computing." End of quote. If I could just move on from there. One more conceptual clarification, however, is required, namely that between ethics and morality. I am one of those weirdos who like to distinguish between the concepts of ethics and morality. Morality, in my understanding, refers to the universal, demonstrable, and observable social phenomenon that people of all known cultures submit their behavior to the demands of obligation. So morality, let me emphasize, is something we see out there in the world. We observe it. The fact that people submit their behavior to the demands of obligation. In Afrikaans het ons die pragtige woord vir demands of obligations, namelijk die behorenseis. Onthou daai woord, die behorenseis. Put more simply, all people that we are aware of acknowledge and accept that it is a legitimate question to ask whether an action is right or wrong or good or bad. So that's morality, something we see out there in the world. Ethics, on the other hand, is the outcome of an intellectual enterprise, namely reflection on the nature of the difference between right and wrong, as well as the development of argumentative strategies, we could also call them theories, in terms of which the difference between right and wrong and good and bad actions can be established or motivated. So ethics, different from morality, is an intellectual exercise in which we reflect on the outcomes of morality, in which we reflect. In a certain sense, one could say that, is there an assembly of ethics somewhere to be noticed in the world? And a library would be an excellent example, because a library literally contains the outcome of the reflection on the nature of morality. The fourth industrial revolution yields a plethora of ethical issues. Time today does not allow me to even list, let alone discuss these. I do, however, ask attention for particularly one of these issues. And this is the matter of the so-called algorithmic biases, that is, the ways in which human biases can be encoded in algorithms. But let's first also then define the notion of an algorithm. What is an algorithm? I'm pretty sure you have discussed quite a lot of that already at this conference, but here is my little contribution. Yuval Noah Harari, whose work some of you may well be familiar with, defines the concept of an algorithm as follows. An algorithm, he says, is a methodical set of steps that can be used to make calculations, resolve problems, and reach decisions. An algorithm is not a particular calculation, but the method followed when making those calculations. End of quote. We use an algorithm to calculate the average of two numbers. Carefully following a cooking recipe to bake a cake is applying or using an algorithm. Beverage vending machines operate via the application of an algorithm. Harari goes further with this last example, and I quote again, The man pressing the buttons and drinking the tea is also an algorithm. A much more complicated algorithm than the vending machine, but still an algorithm. Humans are algorithms that produce not cups of tea, but copies of themselves, like a vending machine, which, if you press the right combination of buttons, produce another vending machine. The algorithms controlling vending machines work through mechanical gears and electric circuits. The algorithms controlling humans work through sensations, emotions, and thoughts. We are all familiar with how algorithms affect and influence us. A new subscriber to Netflix discovers within a week or 3 that a certain kind of film or program is consistently advertised to him or her based entirely on an algorithm that has been construed with reference to material that he or she has already watched. This also goes for advertisements on Google and Facebook. The remarkable yet simultaneously morally disturbing aspect of the workings of algorithms are the outcomes of sorry, I have to read this again. The remarkable yet simultaneously morally disturbing aspects of the workings of algorithms that are the outcome of AI is, as far as I'm concerned, not so much the fact that information is processed on the basis of biases. The inevitability of biases when interpreting hermeneutical objects like texts have been comprehensively argued by authoritative hermeneutical philosophers such as the famous German Hans-Georg Gadamer. For Gadamer, we necessarily interpret symbolic forms on the basis of biases that we already hold. The significant difference between algorithmic biases and hermeneutic philosophy, therefore, is not that the biases are operational in both, but that the biases cultivated in AI come to the fore purely on the basis of robotic interventions that are operationalized within a few days or weeks, and not, as with Gadamer, on the basis of a lifetime of experiences and prejudgments. Also, it seems to me that the content of the biases created by AI can be technically manipulated over and against the biases of the hermeneutic experience, which could take years and decades to develop. So just to summarize very quickly, the idea that what we know is governed or steered by bias is nothing new. That's not new with the introduction of AI. Hans-Georg Gadamer, one of the most famous hermeneutic philosophers, have shown us that bias, preconceptions, and the like play a significant role. The significant difference between the two is the scale and the speed, the velocity with which biases can become operative in the world of robotics. Furthermore, there is the human element in the hermeneutic experiences, which are clearly absent in the workings of AI. Are the limitations of human conduct produced by AI really comparable? At a recent conference in the Netherlands that I attended, the Dutch philosopher from the University of Humanistics in Utrecht, Joachim Duindam, offered an interesting analysis of possibilities in this regard. I mean, are we dealing with similar entities when we are dealing with humans and with robotics? Some would suggest, for example, that a significant difference between the two resides in the ability of the phenomenon of judgment. A robot might be a good referee in a game of rugby, yet instances might occur where judgments are required that robots maybe could not handle. There is a difference between the data processing occurring in robots and the judgments of humans. Harari's argument, of course, is that that which we regard as judgment in the alleged subjective sense is also a form of organic data processing. According to Harari, there is also no fundamental difference between organic and inorganic data processing. All occur in accordance with the dictates of algorithms, including human thought processes. Now, in response to these strong claims by Harari, we could, drawing on Dendam's work, proceed to nevertheless identify and analyze a series of significant differences between robots and humans. I don't know whether you have seriously thought for yourselves about the significant differences between humans and robots. Robots can firstly not hesitate. That's interesting, eh? Robots can't hesitate. A characteristic of all humans. That's one thing that we have in common. We hesitate. Decisions on the basis of mechanic algorithms simply occur once provoked by the algorithm. A key aspect of our humanity is our capacity to think again. That is to hesitate. Imagine a robot consistently thinking again, hesitating. Related is we as humans' capacities for self-reflection. That is our hesitance to simply accept and coincide with the outcome of algorithmically prescribed processing. This means that I am conscious of myself, that I take distance from myself. I am concerned with myself. In the German philosopher Martin Heidegger's terms, my existence is a perpetual exercise in self-interpretation. Who I am is never fixed and is always the outcome of new choices and new decisions. Not only can humans, other than robots, hesitate, humans can also err or make mistakes. Huh? Humans can make mistakes. Die mooie Afrikaanse uitdrukking is, mense kan hulle self vergis. Kan hulle self vergis. Mistakes or errors are actions that warrant and indeed generate requests for pardon or absolution. Imagine a robot turning around and asking for your pardon because of the mistake that I've made. How does one possibly conceive of a construed algorithm that is designed to make mistakes? Yet, to make mistakes constitutes a key element of what it means to be a human. Mistakes, in turn, yield the experience and practice of guilt and forgiveness. Huh? Imagine a robot feeling guilty, asking for forgiveness. Can those experiences ever be associated with the algorithmic prescriptions of robotic behavior? Another seemingly unique human trait is the phenomenon of melancholia, of a poignant reminder of and a hankering after something which is now absent, but at some time was present. As a counterpoint, humans can indeed also enjoy themselves with the phenomenon of feasting, like eating and drinking together as the prototype. Is it conceivable that the act of feasting could be the outcome of a greatly non-organic algorithm that is, in principle, could be switched on and off? Further related to the capacity for enjoyment and festivity is the phenomenon of addiction. Right? Addiction, that's an interesting human capacity. Maybe addiction can indeed be a trait of robots. Humans, however, also have the ability to spontaneously counter addiction, to seek balance, to restore harmony. How is that conceivable in the life of robots? A final human trait that we could list is the capacity for sympathy and empathy. I am oriented towards the future, in full knowledge that the future is never guaranteed. What makes me human is the fact that I can be hopeful towards the future. That closely ties in with our capacity to embark upon lasting relationships. I can love and be loved. I can make a friend and I can be a friend. I can be a friend. Imagine that robots could do that. This brings us back to the first alleged difference between humans and robots that was suggested by the capacity to make judgments. These judgments occur in formalized settings, sometimes in any case, such as when a judge makes a verdict in a court of law. There, the circumstances are formalized, and the judge has to deal with those formalized conditions and circumstances. Notable of these formalized judgments is the possibility or opportunity of appeal, which suggests the fallibility of the judges. Yet we also judge in a variety of non-formalized settings. In everyday life, when we on a daily and sometimes hourly basis have to exert practical wisdom. That's Aristotle's famous notion of prudence or phronesis when making moral judgments. Phronesis is the exertion of prudence or practical wisdom in situations where one has some guiding norm to consider, but when that norm requires application in some practical situation. For example, when a lecturer has to make, and this is a quite regularly occurring example, when a lecturer has to make a decision about the situation of a student that missed a compulsory test, but the student can provide evidence of a serious personal crisis that precipitated his absence. Now, in that situation, the lecturer must make a judgment call, a judgment call based on available evidence. I'm almost done. What I want you to carefully note, sorry, I'm forgetting this stuff. Right. Note now how each of the factors in terms of which I questioned the compatibility of humanity and robotic behavior, how each of them link with key dimensions of our understanding of ethics. All of them are closely linked to our understanding of ethics. To hesitate, to make mistakes, to experience guilt or melancholia, to judge in formalized and non-formalized settings. All of these are dispositions, actions, and orientations that are uniquely tied to our ethical or moral consciousness. It is not at all self-evident if and how such dispositions can be translated into the algorithms that drive the behavior of machine technologies. The human dimension of ethics is not to be underestimated. What then is in store for a future ethics? The question I was supposed to be addressing today. If the developments alluded to earlier actually came to fruition, there is only space for a few brief remarks and comments. Firstly, ethics as the outcome of reflection about the difference between right and wrong will become more important than ever in a future dominated by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Knowledge, science, and technology are not value-free. I hope I don't surprise you by claiming that. They are not value-free, and this will not change in the future either. What will be unusual is the emergence and prevalence of life forms or machines imitating life forms and that are capable of harmful behavior if not well controlled and managed. The control exerted over these phenomena in order to prevent harm will become to an ever-increasing part of the ethics, will become an ever-increasing part of the ethics of the future. What will or ought not to change is the intuition that the most important category of ethics remains responsibility. Responsibility. All of these conundrums that I've called upon or visited, all can be dealt with the best way by the exertion of responsibility. I can't now elaborate on this, except to emphasize the three components of the ethics of responsibility, namely fallibility. When we make ethical decisions, we have to make provision for the possibility that we can be wrong. We could have made a mistake. That which is so difficult for a robot. That's fallibility. Secondly is futurity. When we make ethical decisions, we must make them not only for us here and now, but for future generations. This is one of the most important insights that have come to the fore in 20th century moral reflection, particularly in the work of Kaufman and Bauman and these people. And then the third one is phronesis. I also dealt with that. Phronesis, the Greek word for practical wisdom. Acknowledging the validity of norms, but also realizing that if I want to make ethical decisions, I must apply those norms to practical situations. And that is easier said than done. The fourth industrial revolution is essentially a reflection of the growth of our power over nature and society. More power must mean the acceptance of a more developed and a more focused sense of responsibility. One could also hope that the manifest extension of the spheres of influence that the fourth industrial revolution might open up will generate a more open and pronounced public discourse and debate about the direction we wish to steer with the help of these new developments and technologies. This, in particular, also pertains to the way in which the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution will be distributed in society amongst all who can benefit from them. Thank you very much.